Hey Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, New York City Emergency Management unveiled a PSA this past Monday on what to do after a nuclear attack. Watch this.
So there's been a nuclear attack. Don't ask me how or why, just know that the big one has hit, okay? So what do? There are 3 important steps that I want you to remember. Step 1, get inside fast. You, your friends, your family, get inside. And no, staying in the car is not an option. You need to get into a building and move away from the windows. Step 2. Stay inside. Shut all doors and windows. Have a basement? Head there. If you don't have one, get as far into the middle of the building as possible. If you were outside after the blast, get clean immediately. Remove and bag all outer clothing to keep radioactive dust or ash away from your body. Step 3. Stay tuned. Follow media for more information. Don't forget to sign up for Notify NYC for official alerts and updates. And don't go outside until officials say it's safe. All right, you've got this.
Okay, well, this is frightening. It's frightening that New York City thinks we're at the point where they need to spend government money on a PSA telling people what to do in the event of a nuclear attack. Now, that being said, this is good information for what to do after an attack has happened. The mantra, get inside, stay tuned, is a good one to remember. That's if you're lucky enough to not be incinerated by the explosive blast or crushed by the shockwaves. So if you do survive, you need to worry about radioactive fallout. And that's why you need to get inside as quickly as possible. But this PSA doesn't tell you a few pretty important things you need to know, like how long are you expected to stay inside sheltering in the basement? The answer could be a month. At minimum, you'll be down there for 24 to 48 hours, but mostly likely longer than that. On top of this, they don't tell you how are you supposed to tune in to any radio or media when you're in a basement with very little reception, and that's if cell towers survived. And where are you supposed to go to the bathroom? And what are you supposed to eat? And how are you supposed to rinse off the debris if you're sheltering like in a crawl space or something? So FEMA recommends you prepare yourself in advance by doing a few things in addition to what this video has to say. So I have the single most important thing that you should do that neither FEMA nor New York City government tells you, and I will get to that. But let's look at what FEMA says just in case, okay? First of all, you're going to need some water, a gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days. You're going to need this for drinking and for sanitation. That's how you're going to wash yourself off. If you get yourself into, you need to clean yourself up. That's the way you're going to take a shower potentially. You're going to need some food, at least a 3-day supply of non-perishable food. So you're going to need battery or hand cranked radio. And that's actually how you're going to find out about how long you need to be staying in your basement or crawl space or wherever it is you are in the center of your building. You definitely want to be in a concrete building. Try to stay, if your house is made out of wood, try to be in a commercial building that has concrete, or get to your basement or crawl space or something of that sort. But that's how you're going to hear about updates. You need a hand crank radio or battery operated, but it's better to get a hand crank. You need battery operated flashlights and some extra batteries. You need a first aid kit. You need a whistle to signal for help in case you're underneath a bunch of debris. You need a dust mask, maybe an N95 to help filter contaminated air, I know you want to throw away all your masks. I know most of us want to get rid of them, but don't get rid of them just yet because you might need them in case of a nuclear attack. So keep those N95s around in your emergency kit. You'll need some plastic sheeting and some duct tape potentially to help keep things, keep the wind out of the place and to keep yourself protected. You're going to need some moist towelettes, garbage bags, and plastic ties. That's how you're going to go to the bathroom. That's for your personal sanitation. You're going to need a wrench or pliers to turn off utilities, a can opener for food if your kit needs it. You're going to need some local maps because you probably won't be able to access them on your phone. If you can, try to add to your kit. So those are the things you need. But if you can, try to add to your kit things like prescription medications and glasses infant formula and diapers if you need, pet food and extra water for your pet. You probably also should gather your important family documents like copies of insurance policies, identification, bank account records in a waterproof portable container. Also, you'll want some cash or traveler's checks and some change. You want maybe some sleeping bags and blankets and pillows, complete change of clothing. There's a lot of things you have to assemble, but just in case, you need you're going to need some, long sleeve clothes. That's what you'd want if you're dealing with this type of thing. Don't get this short, skimpy stuff. You need the long sleeve clothes because you want to stay protected from radioactive fallout. You'll also want some bleach. You want a medicine dropper, a fire extinguisher, matches, personal hygiene items, and paper and pencil so that maybe you can leave a note somewhere saying, we're down here. Now, these are the important items to assemble in this emergency kit. And really, they're for any type of emergency. So it's smart to assemble this and have them located already where you think you would go. But there's one thing, the most important thing we should do to prepare in advance of a nuclear attack. And that is demand Washington stop provoking war with Russia. This seems to be the easiest thing we could do in advance of a nuclear attack, is to not have one in the first place. The fact that the New York City government thinks they need to spend time and money on a PSA to train people on what to do during a nuclear attack should be a wake-up call to all of our politicians, but mostly to we the people, who should stop and say, wait a minute, did we sign up for this? Are we really willing to be nuked for Ukraine? Because apparently our government leaders think it's a possibility. And despite the risk, they aren't backing down. Instead, they're preparing us for the worst. And honestly, I think we should prepare for the worst, which is why I've given you much of this information on what you need in your emergency kit, because quite frankly, I have no faith in our government leaders to stop escalating and provoking wars, particularly with Russia. So I don't know.
Grim, Kim.
I'm not the one that did it. New York City did it. They're the ones who came out with this PSA to begin with. And that should make us all stop and question a little bit. Like, they really think this is a possibility. I mean, it's crazy, but this is where we're at.
Remember the guidance from the Cold War that was like, oh, get under your desk? Like, that was what they told everybody to do. Which I don't think that was particularly useful.
Well, look, what this is reminding me.
Okay. No, didn't they say that for nuclear fallout? Like, get under.
They did
I'm not that old, Robbie.
They did, yeah.
Yeah. It did remind me a little bit of, remember those threat levels that they promulgated under Bush 2, where it was like, what color is it today on the terrorist threat level? Yellow, green, orange, all of that stuff. And there was some, liberal commentary at the time that said that this is not really, well calculated to assess threat. What it is that the government can kind of turn up the threat levels and get people afraid and more likely to want to, accept various authoritarian policies, restrictions on speech, the kinds of things that we saw in the post, 9/11 years, because they were being told constantly something really, really, really bad is going to happen. And I wonder how much of this is, sincerely a signal of the political landscape that we're in right now, and how much of this is a tool employed often by people in power because they know that the more folks are afraid, the more that they will tolerate.
I had that same thought when I saw this, thinking, oh, they are just really trying to get us riled up. But then, I don't know. I mean, we're in an era right now where anything goes. It seems like I think, oh, no, that's too crazy. That'll never happen. And then sure enough, it happens. So it does make me a bit nervous that they are putting these PSAs out there now and saying, hey, you've got this. By the way, you've got this, she says at the end.
So I just looked it up. It's the Duck and Cover campaign, which was the standard response to potential nuclear attacks throughout the 50s and 60s, where they told, kids in school to duck and cover under their desks if they're in school, or against a wall with your head and face protected if you are outdoors.
Well, it's funny because my dad grew up during that era, right? He's a boomer, and I was telling him yesterday about this PSA. I said, yeah, New York came out with this PSA telling us what to do in a nuclear attack. And he goes, oh, I already know. You get underneath your desk. That was what he...
There you go.
Because that's what he was told over and over. I mean,
are you going to invite us to hang out in your fallout shelter, Kim?
No, get your own. You guys need to get your emergency
How are we going to produce
together.
the show?
Well, I'm going to have like the satellite and all that on my end, so you guys need to be getting your stuff together on your end.
Okay, well, we can get under this table. This table's pretty big.
This is an interior space. But what's so funny to me about that is this presumption that people living in New York City have all of these options for where to go.
Yeah.
She's standing in like this amazing like $1 million loft that also nobody lives in. And it's like, go to your basement. Who has... I mean, maybe if you live in a walk-up, there's a basement. My walk-up in New York didn't have access to the basement. The idea that there's an interior room at all, LOL, it was a studio.
Right,
like, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and that just kind of goes to the, it's like what we saw after Hurricane Katrina, for example, where it's the poor people who end up damaged and hurt the most. That's who would be, in a nuclear attack like this, only the rich will survive. I mean, that's just the reality of it. They're the ones that even right now, some of them might be building bomb shelters for all we know. There might actually be a spike. I'd have to look it up, but I know that there's a spike in purchasing like potassium iodide, which is supposed to help, like nuke protect. You take the pills, right? Although experts say, it's just like that. It's not enough. Like the radio, it's just going to be way too. Like some pills aren't going to save you from that. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are building up these types of things. I mean, I certainly think everybody should have an emergency kit, no matter the disaster. You need it for earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, anything, and it would also be handy in a nuclear, I guess, attack. So I'm a big proponent of getting yourself your emergency kits, getting yourself supplies of food, do all of that as best as you can. But again, Brianna, like you mentioned, where do you store that if you're poor and you have a small, tiny place? Where
we're gonna lock that door. We're gonna ration the remaining coffee, and you and I can finally have our long debate on wokeness as the world burns.
It'll be a month,
we need more incentive not to provoke Russia. Don't let that happen. Save me.
All right, we'll have more rising after this.